Hey, what's going on? It's Mr. Norton, and we have another video. I want to thank you for joining us when we go ahead and start talking about some fundamentals of demand. We're going to be talking about the things that you need to know to start building your knowledge for the topic of demand in your high school economics course. Some of the things that we'll be doing as we go throughout this new unit, this new topic, is we're going to be talking about all the things that are required for demand to exist. We're going to talk about how quantities and demand change and why. We're going to be talking in later videos about how things cause a change in demand. We have an increase in demand. So if you remember back to the PPC curves that we did in previous videos and lessons, depending on if you're in my class, if you can remember why a curve has an outward shift and an inward shift with PPCs, we have something very, very similar going on when we talk about changes in demand. And we'll apply that to changes in supply too. So why don't we go ahead and talk about what our real goals are for right now as far as this video goes, the things that I want you to be able to accomplish. Even if you're not in my class, I know I have a number of different subscribers and they're not always from my class, so let's see how we go here. First thing, I want you to make sure you know how to define what demand actually is. We need to be able to describe the law of demand and basically apply it to different things. We need to interpret a demand schedule and a demand curve. They are essentially the same thing, they just show data in different ways. And I need you to differentiate between individual demand and market demand. I don't know why we have such an issue historically where I teach on trying to tell the difference between individual and market. Well, we're going to try and make sure we can get through that today. All right, so let's talk about what is demand. What do you actually have for it to exist? Okay, so if we think of demand, the things that you need to be able to take into account, and this may not be for you, okay, individually, because demand for products change depending on the person. So you need to first be able to have the criteria of it has to be something that I can afford, and it also has to be something that I'm willing to spend my money on. There are plenty of things out there in the world that I can afford, but I'm not willing to spend my money on them. So demand does not exist for those products as far as I go. That doesn't mean that there isn't demand for the product, period. And we'll kind of talk later about how market demand versus individual demand. I can have zero demand for something, but as long as people have demand for it at that price, there is actual demand for it, and that's more of market. So let's take a look at these things too. There's plenty of things out there that I can't afford, but I want. So that doesn't mean that I have demand for it. Like, I'm not factored in for it. $1 million homes. Yeah, I want $1 million house, but if you know where I work and I teach and I haven't hit the lottery and streaming on video games is not exactly bringing in pennies of dollars, I think is probably what I'm earning doing that. It's more of like I do it for fun. I'm not affording $1 million house. I work at Chandler Park. Okay, it's just not going to happen unless I somehow start finding a way to steal money from Chandler Park, which isn't worth going to jail for. So $1 million houses, not going to be in my future, not going to be demand for that, okay? There's plenty of nice cars that I would like, but I just can't afford because I don't have the money for it. So those are really just kind of remain as wants in terms of economics. I don't have an actual demand for them. So let's take a look at some things here. What do you think? What do you think the demand is for these as far as me? Maybe you have a different demand for it. So if you're not really sure what we're looking at here, it's kind of crazy. I went for abandoned home. That is on the left. Personally for me, I could probably afford the abandoned home, but I don't want it, so therefore there's no demand for it. Now that's not to say that there isn't a demand for that abandoned home. There may be somebody who's willing to purchase that home so that they could bulldoze it and make something different. So therefore their individual demand could exist for that. Okay. Then there's this crazy looking rainbow stripe suit. I just simply typed in ugly suit. That's not for me. I know I wear suits a lot, but I'm not wearing that thing. Okay. Could I afford it? Probably. I didn't check on the price for that specific one. But I don't want it, so demand clearly not going to exist. We've got a Nicolas Cage t-shirt, if you're familiar with like Lost Treasure and other movies like Face Off. That's who that is. He's not my favorite actor, and even if he was, no way am I buying that shirt, so demand's not going to exist on that from me. Now, if you're like, oh man, that's such an ugly shirt, I would buy it just because it's ugly and that's my style, you have demand for that. Same thing for the rainbow suit. And then we have what's referred to as a smart car on the right. I kind of think it looks like a roller skate. With my size, I'm probably not fitting in it very well. Smart cars are pretty cheap in terms of cost, so I can actually afford that. But because of just personal interest, I have no desire in it to purchase it, so clearly it's not going to be that way in demand for me. So let's take a look at some other things here. We've got a Corvette on the left, brand new Vet. I work at Chandler Park, so no, unless I make Miss Coleman or Miss Fisher money, I'm not getting that Vet. Okay, we've got $1 million home. That's what I typed in. No, I didn't. Just typed in mansion, I think. That doesn't matter, but that's in the center again. I work at Chandler Park, and on the right, I do have suits. I actually typed in $1,000 suit for that one. So let's take a look at each of those three things. Clearly, what you see on the screen is not my lifestyle. I would love to just be able to run around doing exactly what that character is doing. A little shameless plug for streaming when I do that on my free time. But obviously, that's not me. I don't live that lifestyle. So clearly, those are all things that I have wants for, desires for, but it's not considered demand because I don't have the money for it. So let's talk about the law of demand, all right? The law of demand, I want you to think of it from a point of view of a consumer, okay? The more expensive that an item becomes, the less that you will buy of it, okay? And the cheaper that things become, the more that you will buy of it, okay? So I want you to think of it, simplified version, as price goes up, demand goes down, goes down. As price goes down, demand goes up. They have opposite relationships. When one is moving up, the other one is moving the opposite way. Let's think of candy bars. Okay, like for me, if you price them at $1, I'm probably going to have a demand of 5. So like my quantity demanded at $1 would be 5. If you priced it up to $5, like for me personally, that would actually quantity demanded would be 0 because it's too expensive for me. Now, if we took a approach of everybody, well, we'll save that for a little bit. I don't want to get you confused so far. Okay, so think of it that you just have to think of it this way: as price goes up, demand goes down because people will pay less for it. I have students all the time. They're like, Mr. Norton, remember when chips used to be 2 for $1? Now they're like 1 for 99 cents. And I'm like, okay, great. So this is a great opportunity to think of demand. Like, do you still go and buy the same amount of chips that you did before? And people go, well, no. And so why is that? Because they're more expensive. Well, if they went back to the old price, would you go ahead and increase the amount that you paid for or that you want to buy? And they're like, yeah, because it's cheaper. It's the same thing. That's what law of demand is, okay? Let's take a look at what a demand schedule is, okay? Demand schedule is pretty simple. We take a look. You've got quantity demanded on one side, and you have price on the other. All we're doing here, this even says an individual. So this is talking about some individual out there in the world. We don't know who they are, but this is it. I don't even know what this product is because it just says quantity units. It doesn't matter, but we can see here. Okay, so we have price going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we also see the quantity that they want to purchase on the right. So let's take a look. At 1, they're willing to purchase 25. At 2, they're willing to purchase 20, 3, 15, 4, 10, and 5 and 5. So what's the difference in the quantity demanded at $5 versus 1? So if I asked you something like that, we would just simply look at the quantity demanded at $5 is 5. The quantity demanded at 1 is 25. 25 minus 5 is there's a difference in 20. Okay, can I see the law of demand here? I absolutely can, because as I go up the price, we end up having a decrease in the quantity demanded, and the opposite is true too. As I start working my way down from $5, if we're looking at specifically at the quantity demanded, I can see that the quantities are going up. Another example, so let's take a look here. We've got price here, 60, 40, 30, 24. And then on the right, we have quantity demanded where it goes 2, 3, 5, 7. Again, things that you should notice here is that we have the price dropping and the quantity demanded going up. And if we go the opposite way, as the price goes up, we see the quantity demanded going down, right? 24 for the price, $24. This person wants 7. If we popped it to $60, this person wants 2. So we can see the law of demand is clearly working here. Now, what's a demand curve? A demand curve is basically taking the information from your demand schedule and you turn it into a curve, a line graph, okay? So when we take a look at this, we basically see at, let's see, at point A, we have 60 for a price, and that the quantity demanded is going to be 400. And then as we drop the price to 40, that actual demand increases to 800. So the one thing you need to notice about demand curves is they always go from upper left to lower right, because the higher the price, the less that people want. Let's take a look here at $80. They don't want any of it. That's why the graph, the point is so high. And then as we start lowering the price, it starts shifting out to the right, because at $0, we'll just say 1, okay, 1,600 of them are demanded in that particular week. So again, does this curve show law of demand? It absolutely does. When we shift over to supply in a few lessons from now, you'll see that the curve actually goes the opposite way. It'll start at the lower left and move to the upper right. But again, we're going to save that for then. So let's take a look here, maybe some practice here. How did the quantity demanded change from point A to point B? Well, let's take a look. At $5 is where point A is, and we go down and there's 100. That's the quantity demanded for it. That's 100. Okay, point B, it's $3, and we go ahead and see that there's a quantity of 300. So as the price dropped by $2, the quantity demanded goes up by 200. Okay, so that's the law of demand again. Price dropped, more increase in terms of demand. If we said the reverse, like what's the change in quantity demanded from B to A, we would have a loss in demand, a decrease in demand in terms of quantity. Okay, we're not having an actual decrease in demand. That's actually a different term. That's when we have a new curve actually be coming out. So that'll be something that we cover in the next little video series and lesson we have in class. Okay, last thing I want you to make sure that you are understanding is the difference between market and individual. Again, individual would be how much, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? How much an individual is willing to purchase at each price. And the market is just simply everyone. How many, like, again, we go back to the candy bars thing. Like, if I were willing to buy one candy bar at $1, like, that would be my demand for $1, right? But for market, we'd have to take into account everybody at $1, okay? Everyone in the world. What's the demand for the candy bar? So it might be 1 for me at individual. It could be 900,999 candy bars for market. I don't know what that is. I'm making up numbers. But the market will always be higher. Even if you sat there and increased it to $5. Now, I'm not going to pay for a Fifth Avenue for $5, but there could be someone out there. There could be several people out there that really love Fifth Avenues, even though it's my favorite candy. I end up paying $5 for it. So because there would be people out there willing to buy a candy bar for $5, you would still have something showing in the demand schedule if we're talking about market, because that's talking about everyone else. So again, you can, and you'll even see in your textbook if you're working with me in class, you'll have cases where, like, I'm not willing to buy anything, but you look at someone's individual demand schedule, an individual demand curve, and then you flip it over and look at a market where I might have had 0 demand for something. The market still shows that there is demand for it, because there are other people out there with different circumstances, like different wants, different income, and just different ways that they're willing to spend their money. So, I mean, it was a short little video. I know I'm looking at the clock here, about 13:30. So hopefully you have a pretty good fundamental understanding of how to interpret a demand schedule, how to interpret a demand curve, what demand is, and basically the differences between market and individual. In the next video we're going to have some fun. Haha, I know this was like, oh, it's class, it's not fun. But this is one where we're really going to have to pay attention, because we're talking about differences in things that can cause changes in demand. And it becomes very confusing for students depending on what the topic is, just because you're unfamiliar with a lot of the things that are associated with a change in demand. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you later.